Step back to the untamed Wild West, where justice wasn't blind but brutal, and punishments turned crime into unforgettable spectacles.
Would take people and they would hack their arms and legs off, and while they were alive, throw them on a fire.
Discover the darkest methods of frontier justice. I would really appreciate if you support us by subscribe to our channel and hit the bell before we start. Thanks. Tar and feathers. In the flickering twilight of the Wild West, tar and feathering was a punishment that seared skin and dignity. Imported from medieval Europe, this brutal method transformed offenders into grotesque symbols of societal defiance. Hot tar was poured, its heat biting deep into flesh, while feathers clung mockingly, stripping victims of identity and humanity. Tax collectors or dissenters often found themselves at the center of these humiliating spectacles. The pain wasn't just physical, it was psychological, branding its victims as outcasts and marking communities with haunting memories. The crowd, eager for their taste of vigilante justice, watched with a mix of horror and satisfaction as the offender stumbled away, a living warning to others. This wasn't justice, it was raw vengeance. The scars left behind weren't just on the skin, but deep in the soul. For the victims, the ordeal was a living nightmare. For the spectators, it was a chilling reminder of the fine line between order and chaos. Spanish Tickler. The Spanish Tickler wasn't a playful name, but a nightmare carved in steel. This claw-like tool tore through flesh with cruel precision, leaving behind agony and mutilation. Its origins in medieval Europe found dark echoes in the Wild West, where lawlessness demanded extreme measures. Torturers wielded this vicious instrument to shred skin and muscle, forcing confessions or inflicting punishment that lingered long after the physical wounds had healed. In a time when authority was fragile and fear ruled, even the mere threat of the tickler was enough to silence rebellion. Its sharp claws weren't just weapons, they were messages. They whispered of power and control, of pain wielded like a sword. Victims bore not just the marks of their punishment, but also the weight of a community's desperate need for order, a need that often blurred the line between justice and barbarity. Lash of justice. The whip cracked through the air, its sound slicing the silence like a blade. Flogging, an ancient punishment, found a fierce resurgence in the Wild West. Offenders, bound and exposed under the unforgiving sun, faced the merciless lash that tore into skin and soul. Each strike was a symphony of pain, orchestrated by lawmen whose hands delivered justice without mercy. The crowd, silent witnesses to the brutality, watched as flesh turned raw and blood stained the ground. The punishment wasn't just physical, it was a ritual of humiliation designed to remind all of the cost of defiance. For the condemned, each lash was a step closer to despair. For the community, it was a grim affirmation of order in a land where chaos often reigned. Flogging left scars that never truly healed, on the body, the mind, and the spirit. Barrel of fear. Imagine the suffocating darkness of being submerged in a barrel of water, every gasp for air a desperate fight against the encroaching tide. Drowning in a barrel was a punishment as haunting as it was brutal, reserved for those whose crimes were deemed unforgivable. Victims were bound and slowly lowered into the water, their struggles muffled by the wooden confines. Each moment stretched into eternity as panic and despair took hold. The community watched, their faces a mix of stern judgment and quiet horror. This wasn't just a death sentence. It was a psychological torment designed to instill fear. The barrel became a watery tomb, and the memories of such punishments lingered long after the final bubbles rose to the surface, a chilling testament to the extremes of frontier justice. Dragged by horse. The Wild West held no mercy for horse thieves, and horse dragging was its cruel answer to crime. Offenders were tied by their ankles to a horse and dragged mercilessly across the rugged terrain, each jolt of the galloping animal a step closer to death. The dust rose like ghosts, obscuring the faces of the crowd as they watched the brutal punishment unfold. Bones broke, skin tore, and life ebbed away in the relentless grip of the desert's wrath. This wasn't justice, it was terror, a lesson etched in blood and pain. For the spectators, the gruesome scene was both a warning and a spectacle. For the condemned, it was a journey into agony. The legacy of horse dragging remains a stark reminder of a time when cruelty was mistaken for justice, and survival often came at the cost of humanity. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like it and share it with your friends. Also subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming amazing videos.